Hello guys, Mage here, back again after a couple of weeks have passed since Classic release. I'm playing on the Horde side on the EU server Flamelash in the guild Sea House. As of the recording of this, I am level 45 with my Mage. I'm having a good time playing and chatting with my friends, and I hope you guys watching are enjoying yourselves as well. Since I'm playing a Mage, I wanted to make a video about the route I've chosen to take, leveling as a Fire Mage. AoE farming as Frost has gotten a lot of attention since the world first 60 leveled that way, so as a counterbalance I thought I would highlight and showcase some of the perks and advantages of a Fire spec, which I believe can be extremely powerful. I really enjoy leveling as Fire and the burst potential is exceptional. So the way I've chosen to segment this video is by first briefly giving my thoughts on the AoE Frost spec. Then I will move on to talking about Fire and some of the most important spells you have in your arsenal as a Fire Mage. What is your mob killing rotation, what are the pros and cons of each spell, and how do they stack up against their potential Frost counterparts. While doing that, I will touch on some of the most important and essential talents, and in the end I will give some general tips and tricks that I have used myself while leveling, as well as show my exact talents. I apologize for the quality of some of the clips and the black bars on the sides. I didn't manage to set up OBS properly when switching from recording private servers to Classic World of Warcraft, but I hope you guys will enjoy the video nonetheless. Let me first give my opinion on AoE farming and the particular spec used for it. I'm sure the individual specs might vary slightly, but the main talents remain the same. I leveled 2 levels myself with the spec in Hillspread Foothills, killing the Hillspread farmers, and I quickly grew tired and frustrated. I felt myself getting very greedy when other people came in and we competed for the farmers, not just other AoE mages. I also felt kind of bad tagging so many mobs, leaving no one left to other people, and that was despite dynamic respawns being active. I realize you can avoid problems like these if you are ahead of the pack and among the highest level players on your server, but if you are not, I really dislike the AoE spec. It absolutely sucks for everything else. You are putting points into talents such as Permafrost, improved Frost Nova, and improved Blizzard, which make very little difference when you are out questing in the world. And frankly, they are worthless if you're solo killing monsters. With an AoE Frost spec, I feel like you have to AoE grind no matter what, and respec if you want to take a break or find yourself not getting any noteworthy experience due to competition. As a Fire Mage, you still have the possibility to AoE grind on a small scale, which I will show clips of and explain further shortly. And it is absolutely busted for normal questing and great in all dungeons and in boss fights. You can switch things up if you are getting bored of grinding and do something else which an AoE Frost spec doesn't really allow. Anyways, those are my thoughts on AoE farming as the primary way of leveling, and once again I realize it can be exceptionally powerful if you don't have any competition. Now let's get into talking about Fire and some of the spells you have at your disposal. Fireball is the most essential. You start with it at level 1 and upgrade it at level 6 and every 6th level thereafter. It does incredible amounts of damage, and at lower levels you will be blowing things up like they're nothing. It costs more mana than Frostbolt on average, but the damage is also higher and gets higher for every rank. And you will always be training your new rank of Fireball 2 levels before Frostbolt. For example, at level 30 you get rank 6 Fireball, which does an average damage of 232.5, not including the damage over time effect, which adds 28 additional damage. You get rank 6 Frostbolt at level 32, which has an average damage of 182.5, so that's 50 damage more from the Fireball. Now, the cast time of Fireball will be 0.5 seconds longer than Frostbolt usually, depending on the talents you have, but the damage per second is actually still higher for Fireball. If you include the damage over time effect from Fireball, the damage per mana ratio lines up pretty much perfectly with the damage per mana ratio from Frostbolt at rank 6 and beyond. Before that, Fireball is indeed less mana efficient, but not much if the dot is included. When speccing into Fire, you want to go for the improved Fireball talent, which reduces the cast time of your Fireball spell by 0.5 seconds. After that, in your second row of talents, I put 5 points into Ignite, which is really one of the best talents you can get in my opinion. It causes your target to burn over 4 seconds for an additional 40% of your fire spell's damage when they crit, and it makes an enormous difference. Even in your 40s where I'm at right now, you can almost damage a mob to 40 to 50% HP with a single Fireball crit and the resulting Ignite dot. Any crits with Frostbolt can go straight home. I'm always looking forward to the next level where I rank up my Fireball because I know how great of a difference it makes. Another important, although less essential spell is Pyroblast, which is an instant cast. You first train it at level 6 and it is good as a finisher to kill off low HP mobs. It is not as mana efficient as Fireball, but because it is an instant cast, you will be able to start regenerating mana faster after using it compared to if you, say, finish a mob off with a 3-second cast like Fireball. In that situation, the 5-second mana regeneration countdown starts when you fire the Fireball, so you are essentially 3 seconds behind compared to if you had just used Pyroblast. Using Pyroblast, more importantly, you also avoid the possibility of potential spell pushback if you are getting hit by the monster. I usually use Pyroblast last in my mob killing spell rotation and use my wand if it is not dead yet, front-loading my spells and giving dot effects time to finish for maximum mana efficiency. Pyroblast obviously also benefits from the Ignite talent, and I don't really care for improved Pyroblast, which can reduce the cooldown from 8 to 6.5 seconds. You won't really be using it that often anyways. The next spell is Pyroblast, which you can first get through talents at level 20. You get the next rank at level 24 and you upgrade it every 6th level thereafter, lining it up perfectly with Fireball, which is nice. If you include the 12-second dot effect, it is by far the most mana efficient. There's no competition with Fireball and Frostbolt. But the cast time is also incredibly long at 6 seconds, which you must keep in mind. I really value Pyroblast due to the high damage and use it at the beginning of my mob killing rotation a lot of the time. Getting spell crits with Pyroblast is insane, especially with the Ignite talent. You can actually kill off a full HP mob with a single Pyroblast crit, depending on your level and the level of and type of monster you're up against. Of course, there's always the possibility of your Pyroblast being resisted as well, which always sucks. But once you get some points in the Frost talent Elemental Precision, that risk is greatly reduced. I myself only started putting points into Elemental Precision at level 41, getting the most important talents in the Fire Tree first, but getting it earlier might be worth it, I'm not sure. An important talent for increasing your critical strike chance with fire spells is Critical Mass, which you can put 3 points into at level 30 and beyond for an increased 6% crit chance. The talent Incinerate, which I also spec into, increases your crit chance by 4%, but only with the spells Scorch and Fireblast. And then of course you have the last talent Combustion, which is very powerful when used correctly. It increases your critical strike chance with fire spells by 10% initially, and for an additional 10% each time you hit a target with a new fire spell. This effect lasts until you have caused 3 critical hits, and the cooldown is 3 minutes, starting from when the crits have been caused. It can be difficult to control, but I try to line it up so I crit with my Pyroblasts. Getting 3 Pyroblast crits with a single Combustion is difficult, but if you are managing it well, you can get 2 perhaps. It is an enormously powerful talent and great for PvP as well. Combustion gives you insane burst potential. Pyroblast, Fireball and Fireblast make up the most integral part of my spell rotation. I start with a Pyroblast, 1 or 2 Fireballs, a Fireblast and some wand attacks most of the time. Sometimes I used Frost Nova and sometimes Scorch, which can be used instead of a wand for some quick damage. Frost Nova is not always necessary since the mobs are usually close to dying when they reach you. Furthermore, the talent Burning Soul will allow you to take damage and auto attacks with a 70% chance not to get spell pushback, which is actually really neat in a lot of situations. It also reduces the threat caused by your fire spells, which is an added bonus in dungeons. Depending on the level you're at, I find myself killing probably 3 to 5 mobs on average for every mana break, and you are killing those mobs pretty fast, so you're really efficient. I haven't got much experience with a Frost non-AoE leveling spec, so I can't really say how it compares. All I can say is fire feels very strong. Now for some tips and tricks, the juicy part. I want to start by talking about small-scale AoE farming as a fire mage. The way I managed to get enough gold for my mount at 40 was by doing a lot of beast grinding in Stranglethorn Vale and Swamp of Sorrows. I would pull between 3 to 5 mobs at a time and AoE them down. I gathered the beasts, Frost Nova, and actually used Flame Strike, which I believe is quite underrated. I would sort of dance around in the Flame Strike area of effect to maximize its dot effect on the beasts. It is not as mana efficient as Blizzard, even with the dot effect included, but it still seems to trump Arcane Explosion. The fire talents do improve it though, and you can actually spec into improved Flame Strike, which can increase the critical strike chance of Flame Strike by 15%, which is quite a lot. It can proc Ignite, which is awesome, and you can do some really cool tricks with Combustion. If you have Combustion active with say 5 stacks for an increased 50% critical strike chance with fire spells, if you cast Flame Strike on a group of mobs you've gathered to AoE down, the increased crit chance will apply to every mob hit by the spell, so it's not too difficult to crit 5 mobs with Flame Strike or Blast Wave, which is another awesome AoE fire spell, which you can get as a talent at level 30. Blast Wave is considerably more mana efficient compared to Cone of Cold, and it's easier to hit and has a similar slowing effect. So to sum it up, for my AoE spell rotation, I Frost Nova the mobs, Flame Strike, Arcane Explosion or Blast Wave depending on how many of the mobs are still frozen, and then I juggle them around in the Flame Strike area of effect, trying to get hit as little as possible. Now, you are going to be hit, and I have died quite a lot of times trying to AoE farm as a fire mage, but it is also not something I've done before, so I'm getting better at it as well. Getting elemental precision has definitely eased the process too, since spell resists are really something that can mess up your pulls and ruin everything for you. I have found AoE farming this way to be quite efficient. It doesn't take much time, and you're usually quick to drink up and go for the next pull. You're not killing as many mobs at a time as a Frost Mage, but you also have more options as to where to farm and grind. I said before that I feel bad tagging too many mobs, leaving nothing left to other people, but what I've done is I've usually killed beasts not involved in any quests. This is obviously also an advantage to me, since that means there will generally be less competition for the mobs. Anyways, it's something you can do as a way of grinding for a couple of levels, still utilizing all the AoE spells you have in your spellbook so they don't go to waste. Another awesome thing I like about fire is the ease at which you can solo elite mobs. You deal so much damage, and as a mage you have the ability to kite for a long time with Frost Nova, Blink and your slowing spells. Combustion makes soloing elites child's play since you kill them so fast. It's nice to be able to solo mobs such as Tethys and King Bangalash, and I actually managed to kill the Alderman boss Galgan Firehammer together with a mage and a hunter, all underleveled and no healer or tank. It was not my achievement alone, but I certainly managed to dish out some nasty damage and pull aggro in spite of the Burning Soul talent. Being able to solo elite mobs is a luxury I know certainly not all classes have. One thing I remember doing on my Fire Mage on the private server Light's Hope was soloing one of the mobs in the big packs of Dragonkin in the Sunken Temple while my group took care of the rest. As far as I remember, some of those packs had 5 or 6 elites and we didn't have the proper CC to deal with them all. So if our tank went in there and tried to tank all of them, he would simply die very fast. By taking care of one myself, I was able to alleviate pressure off the tank and quite quickly burst the single elite down. You could do this as a Frost Mage as well, I presume, but it would take considerably longer, I imagine, and you wouldn't be able to help your group with the rest of the elites as quickly, risking a very prolonged fight where your healer might run out of mana. Seeing how private server dungeons are harder than classic dungeons, this might not be as big of a concern in classic, but it is still something you can provide your group with that not a lot of other classes can. Now I'll go over my talent route. As explained, I start with 5 points into Improved Fireball, followed by 5 points into Ignite. I then get Pyroblast at level 20 and put 2 points into Flamethrowing next, which increases the range of your fire spells by 6 yards. This gives your Fireball and Pyroblast spells a range of 41 yards, which is 11 yards more than Frostbolt, or 5 yards more if you have the Frost talent Arctic Reach. 41 yards is really long, and it's good for distancing yourself from the mobs you're killing, since you probably won't be slowing them, which means they will reach you faster. Having Flamethrowing makes this less of a problem. Now I spec into Incinerate, which increases the critical strike chance of your Scorch and Fireblast spells by 4% at 2 points. I then put 3 points into Master of Elements, which is a bit weird of a talent. It refunds 30% of the base mana cost of your fire and frost spells when they crit. It's not something I really notice while leveling, but it gives you more sustain and you don't have to take quite as many mana breaks, thus improving your leveling speed. Another option is to take Improved Scorch, which gives your target a debuff when you hit it with Scorch, increasing its damage taken by fire spells. The debuff stacks and it can be great for longer dungeon boss fights and in some raids certainly, but I really don't think it's worth much for normal leveling. You would want to start a mob encounter by spamming a couple of Scorches followed by your higher damage fire spells, but that doesn't seem to be efficient at all, although I haven't tried it. Anyways, my next 2 points before level 30 are put into Burning Soul, which I have already explained the benefits of, and then I get Blast Wave. Now things are starting to get spicy as we reach the Critical Mass talent, which gives your fire spells that 6% increased critical strike chance at 3 points. I've already discussed how pivotal crits are for a fire mage due to the Ignite talent primarily, but we've also got Master of Elements. With Critical Mass, your spec is really starting to come together, and you now have a 10% increased crit chance with Fireblast and Scorch. I'm now in my early to mid 30s, and around the time I start grinding some beasts to get that gold for my 40 mount. so I throw in 1 talent point into improved flame strike for an increased 5% crit chance with the spell. Because you're taking a lot of auto attack damage AoE grinding as a fire mage, you are happy killing some mobs faster than others, so even a single flame strike crit on a group of gathered mobs is valuable. At level 35, you finally get access to firepower, which you throw 5 points into for an increased 10% damage done by your fire spells. It's a no-brainer as a fire mage. You're always looking for ways to boost your damage, and firepower does that very directly. A 10% increase really stacks up when you're throwing out Pyroblasts and fireballs left and right. I actually don't know if the 10% increases after spell damage from gear and such have been taken into account, but I would imagine that's the case. It's also around level 40 you really start getting some nice items. As a fire mage, you'll be wanting the Ragefire wand from a mage quest which takes you to the library in Scarlet Monastery. It increases the damage done by your fire spells by up to 9. You also have the Celestial Staff or the Celestial Orb from another mage quest which requires you to kill the level 42 elite Obsidian Sentinel in Alderman. The Celestial Staff gives the same amount of increased spell damage as the combination of the Hypnotic Blade from Arcanist Doan in Scarlet Monastery Library and the Celestial Orb, but the stats with the combination of Dagger and Offhand are better, and the Orb has a really powerful on-use effect of restoring between 400 and 1200 mana with a 30-minute cooldown. I didn't have the Hypnotic Blade, so I went for the Celestial Staff, but the Orb is definitely better. Another item I want to mention shortly is the Scorching Sash from the quest Achilles by the bundle from Privateer Bloats in Booty Bay. It has plus 13 fire damage, so it's made for a fire mage, but there might be better rare quality belts out there. Anyways, it's a great belt and I'm using it right now at level 45. That was a little detour from the talents, but we're now level 40, which means Combustion is entering our spellbook. I've explained it already, and it's yet another talent which synergizes with Ignite, and it can be insane in PvP. Next, you throw 3 points into Elemental Precision for that increased hit chance, or, more accurately, reduced chance for your enemy targets to resist your fire and frost spells. You might want to get this talent earlier, as I've already touched on, but I believe getting deep into fire quick is more crucial. So we're level 43 now and reaching my actual level in-game of 45. At level 44, I put another talent into improved Flame Strike, but it might be a better idea to go straight into Arcane and Arcane Subtlety, which, at 2 points, reduces your target's resistances to all your spells by 10. I don't know how big of an impact this has, but I think it's quite decent. I would probably now look to get a bit deeper into the Arcane tree and put 3 points into Arcane Focus, which are mostly just to unlock the second row of talents, but it isn't useless. At 3 points, it reduces the chance your opponent can resist your Arcane spells by 6%, which works well for when you're AoE grinding and using Arcane Explosion. We now have Arcane Concentration open, which we slam 5 points into straight away, or at least over the next 5 levels. This gives each of your damaging spells a 10% chance for you to enter a so-called clear casting state, which makes your next damaging spell free. That's cool for, like with Master of Elements, increasing the time between mana breaks since you're simply not spending as much mana. The rest of the talents to 60 are really junk talents and you got different options. I'd finish off improved Flame Strike if I haven't already, or throw 1 point into Arcane Resilience, which gives you armor equal to 50% of your intellect. Depending on how many points I've spent in Arcane, I try to go for the talent Arcane Meditation, which is in row 4 and allows up to 15% of your mana regeneration to continue while casting. To get there, you need to spend 4 more points in Arcane. I'd throw 3 of them into improved Arcane Explosion for increased crit chance with that spell, or 2 into Wand Specialization for increased wand damage. The rest could be put into Arcane Focus until you unlock Arcane Meditation. It doesn't really make that big of a difference since you're so close to 60, and at level 59 you will probably only have 1 point in Arcane Meditation anyways. Now that you're 60, it's time to kick some ass in Molten Core and Onyxia's Lair with your fire spells, right? Well, yeah, unfortunately fire isn't really viable as a spec for those raids due to their fiery themes and the high fire resistances of many of the bosses and the trash mobs. That's a notable downside of fire. You will ultimately have to end up going Frost for waiting until CG or AQ. The respec cost isn't that bad though compared to the gold you should have accumulated leveling to 60. For myself, the cost will be 10 gold, and that's only because I had my little Frost AoE grinding adventure for a couple of levels. That's the video, guys. Thanks a lot for watching through to this point. Making a class guide is something I haven't done before, so I would greatly appreciate any feedback you might have on things you enjoyed and or disliked. You're also welcome to come with suggestions as to what type of content you would like to see next. I'm spending a lot more time actually playing the game currently compared to prior to release, so I have much more gameplay footage. I hope you're enjoying yourselves in Classic and reliving awesome memories from the past or just having fun playing the game. Once again, thanks for watching and take care everybody.